Hello, this is Kermit the Streamer. We are doing a beginner stream of Path of Exile 2. This is going to take some time to build up this particular sort of series, but I'm going to start it here. I had tried to do it earlier with a monk, and I'm just not enjoying that gameplay as much. I do have a, 30-something level witch, and I really have enjoyed that character. I would say that I probably enjoyed the ranger the most in this game so far, but the witch is what made me buy this game, so we're going to start with that. So what the purpose of this video is going to be is just to introduce us to some of the systems that are kind of the basic things that we need to know about Path of Exile 2 when we get started. So first off, we come to and we find ourselves on this beach after escaping the Hangman's Noose. I'm spinning my character around. One thing that's actually really neat about this game is that where you are facing matters. You're using the W, A, S, and D keys to move around, but where you put your little cursor will face your character in different ways, so you've got a lot of abilities that care about which way you're facing, like some of your projectiles attacks and things, and also, you know, your melee attacks will care. This character is going to be more of a summoner class, so the idea is that my minions do a lot of the work for me. So looking straight away at this HUD, we've got our mini-map up here in the top right. Kind of gives us a small version of where we are. We can hit tab and get a bigger version, and it's nice because it's just like in the original sort of Diablo series. It is a transparent, translucent sort of map that allows us to just see in better detail. And then when we do hit tab, it tells us some other things about the server we're on and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to be playing this character as a self-found character. That means I can't party up and I can't trade items, so we're only going to be able to use the things that we find in-game. I think that's going to mean some interesting things for, usually you can share your stash with your other characters. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. This is my first time loading this up in this way, so we're going to see if we can share our stash with our other players, or if this is a unique character entirely. We've got our options menu down here. We've got the microtransaction shop. If you have not, I highly recommend, and I will probably find more use for other things as we get going, but I find that this stash tab is super critical. It allows you to store all of your like weird resources that you pick up in the game that will help you like upgrade weapons and gems and things that you find. So I found that that's really useful to go in here and get the first off the what was it? The currency stash tab, super useful. The gem stash tab I also got. I find it less useful because it's kind of hard to organize. And then the essence stash tab I picked up also because it's super great because it keeps all of your essences sorted, so they're very easy to find and use. I have not personally found that any of the other ones are useful yet. I only just got to the point with one of my high level characters where I started getting the ability to get delirium. I will probably be getting that tab as well, but these other ones I haven't really found a use for. I personally don't think that I wouldn't ever need a flask stash tab because I just run the best one. I guess there are some situations where you might have one that's better for bosses, one that's better for level clearing. I personally don't play the game at that level, I don't think yet, so, and it could be that if there is some sort of PvP scene at some point, I don't think there is one now, that there could be some reason to do this, but I definitely think the gem one is good, currency one is critical. Like if you do nothing else, I would highly recommend getting the currency one, and then this essence one I've made use of so far. Most beginner accounts, oh what the heck, my name is weird, that should not be my name. Maybe I mistyped it, but anyway, those are critical. I highly recommend them. That's not what I wanted to do. We want to do this. Okay, so then the other things that you see, you've got your basic attack down here. You will basically be getting abilities and putting them in these slots here. So you've got your left click, your middle click on your mouse, and your right click. I do have a controller, but I prefer not to use it for this style of game. And then near your WASD, you gotta go. Nice. You got to do, since you're doing movement on the W, A, S, and D keys, you've got Q, E, R, T, and F as abilities. I might eventually key map those to something different, because I do have trouble. I struggle a lot when I'm playing with using anything that's on the T and F key, for instance. Also, R can sometimes bother me, but Q and E I find very easy to use. But it does seem like in this game, you really want to be using all of your skills. It's very hard, I think, to have 7 things that you want to be doing pretty regularly as a character. So what I would do as a beginner is I would make sure that you really focus on these top 3 and maybe your Q and your E as your sort of all-the-time abilities, and then your RT and F be things that you may not always use, or like they're your boss utility spells or things like that. Or there's a lot of weird special enemies in this game that you might need to pull into your toolkit to try and defeat. I'll try to highlight those whenever they come up. We've got life total here, a blood thing that goes down. One of the neat things about this game is you do have access to something called an energy shield. Think like in Halo or first-person shooter. Once you have a piece of armor that has an energy shield, it gives you an extra blue shield around your life total that basically gets applied damage first before your actual life total gets taken out. Energy shield management is super important in this game. The Witch is going to be a character that may have some talents that boost that. We've got our flask here. This, by hitting the 1 key, you can use it's like a potion. Instead of having a belt full of like 10 potions, you have 1 big potion that slowly will refill as you're playing the game. Same with the mana. Mana's over here on the right. I have not found so far, this game is still in early access, I've not found so far that most classes have issues with mana management. Of note, I would say the Mercenary definitely does, and I have run into instances where my Ranger has been really low on mana at certain stages of the game. I do not remember having that problem with the Witch at all ever, but still, you've got that. I assume this is going to be changed as this is in early access. Things might be modified over time. We've got our town portal right here at the beginning of the game. You can't town portal. There's no real need to. So we'll go over the character sheet. That's by hitting C on the keyboard. You can pull up your character sheet. You got your nice picture here, what class you are, where you are, what type of game you're playing. You've got your attributes. Attributes in this game are interesting. Unless you've got a specific talent or some sort of ability, your attributes don't really do anything directly for your character, like damage scaling or anything like that. I'm going to go over what they do for you. Strength is basically the biggest thing that adds to your life total. For every point of strength, you get 2 points of life. So if you're having issues with your character getting killed a lot, probably one of the things you're going to want to do is throw some points into strength, because it's going to increase your health total a little bit. One of the other things that attributes are really important for is that for every 5 in a given attribute, it'll give you the ability to equip another support gem of that type. We're going to get more into that later. You don't have any support gems at the start of the game, so it's kind of hard to really go into that, but there may be a point where you have some really sweet support gem that'll make your skills or spells stronger, and the way to unlock that will be by putting strength in it. Also, just like in Diablo or games of this sort, some of the higher ranked weapons and armor will have strength requirements or dexterity requirements. As this is a spellcaster class too, a lot of the Witch's spells, especially the higher level ones, are going to have some pretty high and intense intelligence requirements. So then dexterity, every 5 points there gives you, every 1 point gives you 5 points of accuracy rating. Accuracy can be thought of as, well, basically the ability to land your hits, and more than likely there's some sort of math equation for whether or not some of your spells hit with their full effect. You know, and I'm actually going to do some research into that. I don't actually know how impactful accuracy is But I do know that just like strength, there are some items that require high dexterity. Also, some of the really cool spell support spell gems that you get do require that you have some points invested in dexterity. So I haven't really found that any stat is less important. They're just going to be important exactly when they are important. And you'll hopefully, as you play the game, figure out when that's going to be. Intelligence, very useful for a spellcaster class. That's going to govern your maximum mana. Each point gives you 2 mana. So the Witch, as we can see, starts out with a high mana pool. Intelligence does not, I do not believe, affect your ability to regenerate. At least not, it's not directly indicated. But then the other thing that intelligence is going to do for you is give you your intelligence support capacity. So just looking at this right now, I know that more than likely most of my support gems are probably going to be intelligence based, because they have started me out in the beginning of the game being able to equip 3 of those without putting any more points into intelligence. So intelligence gems are going to be really important for my skills. We've got our life total here. Again, that's a composite that's probably based on your class and also based on your strength total, because if it was just 1 for every 2 points, I'd only have 14 points. Well, I've got way more than 14, and it's not 44, which would imply that the base life for every character is 30 or something. The base life is probably different depending on what class you are. I don't know this for a fact. Spirit is going to be a thing that we figure is important for this character. Spirit is going to be the source through which we summon all of our various minions and skeletons. Well, not all of them. Some of them we do get from spells and stuff that we use. But Spirit is all of your persistent ones. Like your skeleton, think about your skeleton mages, your skeleton archers. They're going to rely heavily on whether or not you have enough spirit to support their ranks. Your base mana is right here. Energy shields right here. So I want to talk about defenses real quick. We've got a number of different defenses that are important in this game. We've got block. This is the ability to just outright block damage. And this is a full thing. Like, you either block damage or you don't. I don't actually suspect that we're going to be building our witch in a way that she will have block. But it theoretically could be possible that if we did want to run like a one-handed tanky sort of witch, we could carry a shield and then have a block percentage here. And what that basically would equate to is a percentage chance that any incoming damage from strikes, specifically strikes and projectiles, could possibly just be ignored by our shield. That's going to be a percent chance again. Evasion. This is the chance that something could just miss you. It's going to be a roll that pits their accuracy against your evasion. And again, notice that's going to be on enemy strikes or projectiles. So that's going to be melee attacks and things like bullet attacks, bow attacks, arrows, things that are coming, being thrown at you, being sent your way by the monsters that you face, and in some cases the bosses. So this is a chance that an attack just misses flat out. So evasion's good. It does seem like it doesn't stack in an additive way. So let's say I have 2 pieces of evasion type armor. If I have one that gives me an evasion rating of 30 and then one that gives me an evasion rating of 15, that doesn't make me have 45% evasion. There's some sort of mathematics equation there. As a matter of fact, my base character here, naked with no armor, has a 30 evasion rating. So that's a 6% chance. If I put on one piece of armor that has like a 15 evasion rating, I believe this jumps up to around 30%. We'll do that. We'll look at that again once we get some other pieces of equipment. But that is the chance that normal attacks just miss you. So then, let's say we've got an attack coming in. It's going to go through that chance to be blocked, that chance to be evaded, and then the next thing it's going to hit is our energy shield. So however much damage that attack is going to be will be applied to our energy shield before it gets applied to our life total. Some important things from the tooltip here. Chaos damage hits the energy shield at double. So let's say you had an energy shield of 30 and you had an attack coming in that's chaos type for 15. That would be enough to eat the energy shield. If you had a attack of chaos that was coming in at 20, it's going to eat your energy shield and then spill some damage over. The math on how much damage is spilled over, I'm not entirely certain of, because it will also, that damage that's coming through the energy shield will somehow be applied to armor. So I don't know whether armor reduces the damage to your energy shield or whether it only reduces the damage to your health total. It might actually be that armor is applied first. The only other things I want to note about the energy shield is that, as you would expect, bleeding effects and poison effects bypass the energy shield completely. And that makes sense. If you really think about it, those are special attacks that should ignore energy shield, because why would they hit this? Well, just think about it. It doesn't really make sense. So those kind of attacks are going to hit you. You're going to find a lot of bosses and a lot of mini bosses and even some regular monsters that will deal that type of damage as a way to get around energy shield. Then you've got armor. This is specifically related to physical damage, and it does include attacks and spells. Notice that a lot of the other types talk about projectiles and strikes. This does include spells, things that are coming in like a fireball that are going to hit you, or a lightning bolt from another enemy, is going to be in some small part reduced by your armor. Oh, I guess I'm speaking out of turn here. So that is physical damage, because a lot of spells do physical damage. So this is not necessarily going to be a fireball. That's going to be applied through your resistances. But there are lots of spells in this game that count as physical attacks. I know Unearth is a spell that does a physical attack, and there are monsters in the game that have an Unearth style attack that does it. Think of things like the bolts that come from like some of the ranged monsters that are in the early levels of this game. Those are going to be considered physical attacks, and they might also even be considered spell damage. So what armor is damage reduction. So let's say I had 30% armor. If I had a hit coming in for 100, theoretically, that 30% damage reduction is going to bring that damage down to about 70 damage. I'm rounding quite heavily here. But one thing that's key about this is that math is not exactly right. The way armor mitigation, damage mitigation is applied in this game, a stronger hit will have more of its damage preserved. So maybe it works the way I described for a hit of 100, but if it were a hit for 1,000, more of that 1,000 hit is going to hit you. One other note is that your exact damage reduction here depends on the damage dealt, but cannot be higher than 90%. So if you've ever got a point on your character where you're considering which armor to choose, if your armor is floating somewhere near 90%, which I've not seen that happen yet, but I don't ever prioritize that type of armor. I tend to have a balanced approach. Like I'll have some pieces of energy shield, I'll have some pieces with evasion, and I'll have some pieces with armor. But let's say I was playing a warrior, and I had armor approaching 90%, then that's the point where I would say, well, I'm not going to get any returns out of something that adds more armor, so I'm going to make sure that this next piece that I equip is going to have something like evasion or energy shield on it, rather than armor. Then the only other thing to talk about here is our damage resistances. These are going to be spell resistances. Things like the fireball I talked about earlier. It's going to be the damage that a fireball deals is going to be governed by your fire resistance. Same with lightning, cold, and chaos. These all work very similarly in that your maximum resistance is capped at 75% and is not even allowed to be higher than 90. So it's kind of funny because I don't know what the value is of having a resistance of, say, 80%, but I've never seen the resistance go much above 40 at this point. I'm sure it could be done. Certainly if you're focusing on it, you could get to that point. But the only other thing I'll say about this now is that you can also have negative resistance. So you could have a negative 10 to cold. And if you have a negative 10 to cold, that means you're actually going to take extra damage, basically 110% of cold damage that's coming through. So if you're finding that you're struggling in a certain part of the game, this happened to me, and I realized I was getting wiped out by enemies that were doing lightning damage. Well, for some reason, I actually never even figured out exactly how. I had a negative 10% to my lightning damage, and so it was meaning that all of the hits I was taking from lightning-based sources were way higher. So you're going to want to pay attention to that. You're going to want to make sure that's not an issue for your character as you play this game. So that is the basics. I'm going to go ahead and play through a little bit here just to show you our first skill. You're going to find this guy very early, the zombie tries to kill him, and his whole purpose is to die and give us our first skill, or our first item, which gives us our first skill as well. If I hit I, we get our Withered Wand. That has with it a skill, Chaos Bolt. A lot of times the wands or the weapons in this game do come with a basic skill. And this basic skill is going to be tied to left click, and it's going to give us 5 to 10 chaos damage. Now that's great. To start the game with chaos damage, that's great. That's that damage that ignores energy shield and also tends to be pretty effective at hitting our opponents. It's going to be considered a magical attack, so it's going to go against chaos resistance. And I have a feeling, I don't know for a fact, but I have a feeling that they're even higher up into the game, there are not a lot of creatures that I've been fighting that have a high chaos resistance. So that means that I'm probably, this may be a small amount of damage that I'm doing with this Chaos Bolt, but that's probably going to be applied in full. It's going to be 5 to 10 reliable damage. And as we level up this skill and put support gems on it, we're going to be able to find out that it does a little bit more things. We've got our average damage per second of 10. That's interesting to me that it wouldn't be averaged out at like 7. I guess it does say that here, average out at like 8. And it's probably doing some math based on our the cast time, how quickly we can cast it. That's why it's skewing a little bit higher as an average, definitely, because it takes less than 1 second to cast it. And then our critical chance is probably factoring into that a little bit as well. So we're going to get some stuff that's pretty cool as we go. We're going to be able to increase that damage. We might even be able to increase our fire rate. We may even be able to increase the number of projectiles that we get on that. I just noticed this too for the first time. You can do this always attack without moving. I have definitely been at points in the game where that would be really beneficial to do. Although I would say that you don't want to not move when you're in a boss fight. You pretty much should always be moving whenever you're in a boss fight. At least that's what's been my experience. So we're going to call that a day for now. So I'm Kermit the Streamer. This is my Path of Exile 2 stream. We're going to build from this and see if we can get some more content together. So thank you for joining me, and have a great time playing Path of Exile 2.